This is Trinity Storm and you are watching a movie on what if Naruto became a heroic spirit and summoned by Rin Tohsaka in Holy Grail War. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
She thought she was prepared. She thought her preparations were finished. She believed that summoning a saber-class servant was a sure thing. Tohsaka Rin made a mistake not for the first or last time. The absence of a servant in the summoning circle is evidence. And an upstairs explosion that shook the house. Damn it! She yelled angrily as she dashed upstairs, breaking the door open when it became stuck. Only to find a hole in her roof, a small crater in the floor, and collapsed and crushed furniture. And the perpetrator is nowhere to be found. What the hell happened here? She inquired quietly. What are you looking at? A completely unknown voice asked. Rin stiffened in surprise and slowly turned her head to see who was looking over her shoulder. He was a young man with blonde hair, blue eyes, and 3 whisker-like marks on each cheek. He was about 3 inches taller than she was. He also wore a headband with a metal plate with a leaf-like symbol tied to his brow. Rin smacked him away and moved to put as much distance between them as she could. What was that all about? The irritated blonde demanded. HMPH, if that's the kind of greeting I get, I'm not going to answer any more of your summons. He huffed and crossed his arms. She could see him clearly now that she had put some distance between them, such as how he was dressed in a burnt orange and black tracksuit with a red cloak on top, the cloak with a black flame pattern at the bottom. You said summons. Does this mean you're my servant? Rin insisted. Yeah. The blonde shook his head. Shouldn't you be aware of that, given that you summoned me? He questioned. Of course I was aware of that. Rin snapped, unable to conceal her blush. I was expecting you to appear in front of me. Well, I had nothing to do with it. He shook his head. Anyway, I'm Naruto. Let's all get along and win the Grail, shall we? Right. Tohsaka Rin is my name. Rin exhaled deeply. By the way, what class do you belong to? A saber? She inquired, hopeful. Nah. Naruto laughed. I mean, sure, I can use a sword, but I'm equally adept with a variety of other weapons. Oh. Rin was deflated. So, which class are you? Of course, I'm an assassin. What would you anticipate from a ninja? Naruto smiled at her. An assassin? Rin repeated, as if the sky had fallen on her head. She had summoned an assassin, the Holy Grail War's arguably weakest servant class. Despite the unspoken agreement between the Tohsaka and their neighbors, the Matu, to avoid summoning the servant to the spell if possible, a caster would be preferable. Even if the servant was not particularly strong in combat, she could learn something about magecraft from a caster, allowing her to further her family's research. But what about an assassin? They were notorious for being just above the level of a regular human in terms of power and ability, forcing them to target masters rather than other servants. That made her feel sick. Sure, she was a magus, and as a participant in the Grail War, she was willing to fight and kill her opponents if necessary, but there was a distinction between fighting them with honor and surviving, and stabbing them in the back and fleeing like a coward. No, she said emphatically. That will not happen. I'll just have to be careful with how I use Assassin's abilities, and keep him away from masters unless they're particularly unpleasant people who deserve it. To be honest, I haven't even looked at his statistics. She realized and looked up from where she had been gloomily staring at the floor. To find a large yellow stuffed toad plushie with a note attached right where Assassin had been. What the hell? Rin exclaimed as she dashed over to get the note. I went to get something to eat because you looked deep in thought. She read loud with a puzzled expression on her face. But, servants are not required to eat, exclaimed she. Time jump, 1 hour later. An hour. It had taken Rin an hour to find him, all the while looking over her shoulder and concealing the command spells on the back of her hand to the best of her ability. She had searched every restaurant and convenience store that was still open at that hour, only to find him at a ramen stand. You idiot, Rin hissed when she got close enough to him. What were you thinking, leaving on your own like that? She questioned. Don't worry, I can handle myself, Naruto assured her with a grin, before returning to his bowl of ramen.
You could, but I might not,
she snarled. It's not like I abandoned you without protection. Naruto defended himself.
Please give me some credit here.
You cast a spell on me? Was it a noble phantasm, then? Rin blinked, examining herself for foreign elements and discovering none. Not exactly on you, but it is part of a noble phantasm of mine. Naruto spoke to her softly before motioning to a nearby tree. The upside-down torso of what appeared to be another Naruto poked out from among the tree's branches, gave Rin a wave and a grin, and then vanished. Body splitting?
The previous war's assassin had it as well.
It will be useful for gathering data, Rin remarked after she had calmed down, not knowing that he had not abandoned her just to fill his stomach. Actually, it's cloning.
They are exact replicas of me and can use all of my abilities, but they have less energy and are more fragile.
He agreed. What about gathering information? I already have several dozen of them running around the city. A couple dozen? Rin fixed his gaze. How many can you produce? The only actual limit I have is my available energy. Naruto shook his head. With the energy I have now, I could cover the entire city with clones capable of fighting for a few minutes before dispelling. So, if one is destroyed, you can simply make another? You're not going to lose anything? Rin inquired. If a cage bunshin is killed or dispelled, I regain all of its remaining energy as well as all of its accumulated experience. This includes memories. It's a jutsu designed for information gathering, but it's also effective in combat. Naruto elaborated. A jutsu? Didn't you say it was one of your noble phantasms? Rin frowned. It is. It's a jutsu I used so frequently throughout my life that it became something of a trademark for me, evolving into a noble phantasm when I ascended to the throne of heroes. It helped that I was better suited to the Kage Bunshin jutsu than even its creator. Naruto smiled. Wow, so you had to be a super spy, right? Rin inquired, perplexed. No, I used to make hundreds of them when I was fighting to overwhelm my opponents. Naruto laughed as he finished his bowl and pushed it away from him. I'm finished here. Please bring the bill. He told the old lady in charge of the ramen stand, who had been hiding in the back and out of sight. Rin only noticed the large stack of ramen bowls at his side when she realized she would be the one to pay for it. Naruto then surprised Rin by pulling a wallet from somewhere and paying for his meal before leading Rin away. What source did you get that from? I seriously doubt you were summoned with modern currency. Rin insisted. Oh, this? Naruto waved the wallet around innocently. I stole it from a snobbish brat I passed on my way here. Look, it's him. He pulled out the ID from his wallet and showed it to Rin. Shinji Matu. You stole Shinji's wallet, right? Rin smiled broadly. What's the point of coming all the way here after you? This makes everything worthwhile. Not one of your friends? Naruto inquired. He's a jerk. Rin stated unequivocally. He comes from the Matu family, the other Magus family in Fuyuki, but he was born without any magical ability, as their family's magic circuits have been declining for decades. As a result, he is envious of anyone who can use magecraft, but that doesn't stop him from trying to convince me to go out with him every chance he gets. He's popular with the girls at school because of his good looks and his family's wealth, but he's a rather unpleasant person overall. That's intriguing. Naruto pondered. How does he have a servant if he can't use magecraft? He wondered. What? Rin abruptly came to a halt. Yeah. I sensed some vile energy on him and dispatched a clone to keep an eye on him. It was reported that a supernaturally beautiful woman with long light purple hair and wearing a sort of blindfold appeared to talk to him. Naruto elaborated. Unquestionably a servant. Rin concurred. Anything else you discovered? She inquired. She has a snake odor. Naruto smirked. It reminds me of a snake summoner from my childhood, but not as vile as him. Her flavor is more sickly sweet. A servant who smells like snakes. And has her eyes covered? Rin inquired slowly. I can't say for sure until we see one of her noble phantasms in action, but she could be Medusa, the Gorgon. That's so, Naruto mumbled. The Grail just told me the legend of Medusa. The Greek gods messed her up big time, especially that scumbag Athena and that rapist Poseidon. I take it you're not a fan of divinity? Rin was curious. I don't despise gods in general. I simply despise those who abuse their power over humanity, Naruto elaborated. It also helps that I died taking down a power-hungry goddess who had enslaved the entire world. Wait, you assassinated a goddess? Rin stared in disbelief and awe. No, she was immortal. She cut a limb off and it grew back in seconds. Naruto shook his head in annoyance. I sealed her away, robbing her of all her power. But she got one more hit in, which is how I ended up here. But I did gain a Godslayer skill as a result of it, he proposed. I see, that reminds me, I haven't looked at your statistics yet. Rin commented as they resumed their walk. Well, since you're my master, you should be able to see everything, right? Naruto brought this up. Right. Let's see. Rin directed prana into her eyes, activating the master's clairvoyance. And then tripped and fell on her face a few seconds later. Master? Naruto went to assist her. I'm okay. Rin said in a dazed tone as she stood up and stared at Naruto with wide eyes. What's the issue? Naruto smirked. Problem? There is no issue at all. Quite the opposite, in fact. Rin's gaze remained fixed. I'm just surprised by your stats. And how many skills you have. And how many noble phantasms you have. And how you were summoned with caster abilities. Oh, the double summon ability. Naruto shook his head. As for having a lot of tricks up my sleeves, well, I worked hard and got help from a lot of people. That, and wiping out a few armies to turn the tides of a world war and then taking out a seemingly omnipotent goddess, made me rather famous during my time, so it added to the power of my legend. I see. Rin blinked several times. Anyway, your strength is admirable. I was concerned when I summoned an assassin, but it appears that you will not be at a disadvantage in the Grail War. Of course not. After all, I'm fantastic. Naruto smiled. So, how do we deal with Shinji's servant, Mr. Awesome? In any case, what class is she? Rin inquired. He referred to her as Rider. But there's something fishy about that. Naruto pondered. I can't believe he's a master, either. Rin frowned. I mean, unlike you, he didn't have any command spells. Naruto waved her hand away. On either side. Despite this, the servant was obeying him. That doesn't make any sense. Rin spoke slowly.
A master requires a set of command spells to summon a servant and provide them with prana.
She paused. Wait, if Shinji has no power of his own, how does he keep Rider around? There are a few possibilities, none of which are pleasant. Naruto stated solemnly. So, how about we go raid the Matu Manor right now? He arrived a few minutes ago, so my clone couldn't go inside. No, we're not going to attack the Matus. Rin exclaimed, slightly alarmed. Rin. Naruto said her name for the first time, drawing her attention to his narrowed eyes at her. What are you not telling me? And why do I sense so much shame and guilt from you when it comes to this subject? Look, nothing to do with the Grail War. Rin started. You are refusing to attack an enemy master's base. It has to do with the Holy Grail War. Naruto smirked. Spill it now. What if I refuse? Rin stared. His eyes narrowed, giving him the appearance of a fox, only to falter at the grin with far too many teeth that she received in response. He told her, you don't want to go there. Let's go home. I'll fill you in on the details. Rin relented. Sure, she could threaten him with a command spell, but with his obscene monolevel, independent action skill at A+ rank, and magic resistance at A+ rank, it was doubtful a single command spell would be enough, and even if it was, its effects would be short-lived and would ultimately serve to irritate him. Time jump, half an hour later. Alright, let me get this straight. Naruto spoke slowly after Rin had told him about the Matu incident. Because he didn't need a second heir, your father decided to give your younger sister Sakura away to the Matu family, despite their suspicious reputation and the unpleasant rumors about their magecraft, so that Sakura could learn the Matu magecraft since he wouldn't teach her the Tohsaka magecraft in the first place. Without even asking the girl if she wanted to or if she gave a damn about magecraft in the first place. Yes, Rin murmured.
And you spent the past decade pretending she didn't exist, leaving her in the care of an old man who can't possibly still be human after 2 centuries, and with the brat I met earlier who despises Sakura for having power while he doesn't, essentially handing her what would have normally been his birthright, an outsider.
He went on. Yes. Rin lowered her head. I see. He could feel her disapproval radiating off him, and she winced. Tomorrow after school, I'll kidnap Sakura and scan her mind for information about her life with the Matu family over the last decade. And if I don't like what I find, the Matu will be disappointed. He stated this. How can you just? Rin began to object. Rin, I battled and defeated the source of all supernatural power on this planet. If you think I'd avoid what appears to be a political mess, you're mistaken. Naruto laughed. I've faced off against the most powerful and influential people of my time, people who could redraw maps simply by waving their swords. You think I give a flying fuck who supports the Matu at this clock tower place you seem to care so much about? I don't think so. In everything I've done, I've always followed my own morals rather than succumbing to peer or political pressure. That is something I will always do. This concludes the discussion. Next day, time jump. Naruto was displeased. Absolutely not. His plan to kidnap and examine Matu Sakura for whatever magecraft training she was subjected to had been pushed back, and he was furious. He didn't know why, but his gut told him something was seriously wrong with the seemingly pleasant purple-haired girl. The despair she exuded, as well as the intense vile energy emanating from her that was not her own, did not alleviate his concerns. Whether you like it or not, this took precedence. Ryder had apparently placed a number of magical sigils around the school grounds, and based on the scent of blood from those sigils and Shinji's inability to provide Ryder with prana, he and Rin had a few ideas about what they were supposed to do, especially given Medusa's legend as a monster that devoured countless humans and even her two sisters after a point. That meant they had to go around destroying every sigil they could find in case Shinji managed to activate it before Naruto could take out Ryder. So? How are we going about it? Naruto inquired, his gaze drawn to the large red drawing. I'm not certain. What are your thoughts? Rin pondered. Destroying the structure that it is on would undoubtedly work, but I would prefer not to wreck the school if possible. Let's see. Naruto knelt and pressed his hand against the sigil, probing it with his own energy. Yes, we were correct. It's a bounded field that harvests the life of everything within it. He scowled before black patterns spread from under his hand and encroached on the red sigil. Before both glowed and faded away. Done. And right on time. He stood up and turned to the side. Rin flinched at the sight of a blue-haired red-eyed man wearing a blue bodysuit that was partially armored and a red spear resting on his shoulder, who followed his line of sight. Yo. The servant, clearly Lancer, greeted. Hello there. Nice weather, isn't it? Naruto smiled as he approached. Sure, Ga. Lancer began to respond sarcastically when Naruto appeared within his guard, grabbed his face, and threw him down from the top of the school building, one down into the track field in the courtyard. My clone will assist you. Naruto said this just before charging after his opponent. Eh? Rin blinked before noticing Cage Bunshin, who was grinning at her. Oh. Lancer looked at Naruto with annoyance and interest from below. So, based on that overcompensating spear, you're the Lancer of this Grail war. Naruto made a remark. Why you've got a big mouth, kid. Lancer's pupils constricted. What exactly are you? A saber? No, just a common assassin. Will you please be gentle with me? Naruto returned the smile. You were sneaky enough to slip through my guard without my noticing, so I guess I can see it. Lancer deliberated. But what kind of assassin wears orange? He queried. The amazing kind that can blend in with anything. Naruto stated proudly. Now, prepare to see my hidden power. He exclaimed proudly. Is it already a noble phantasm? Lancer tensed up and braced himself to get out of the way of whatever the blonde threw at him. And then blinked in surprise as something grabbed his leg and dragged him down into the ground until only his head was visible. Another blonde assassin phased out of the ground next to him, a satisfied grin on his face. You sly bastard. Lancer sounded hesitantly impressed. Thank you. I'll stay until I find the Holy Grail. The second Naruto pretended to bow. Not so much you. He made a kunai. Are there any hard feelings? The ground around Lancer exploded, blasting both the earth and the clone standing on it back and causing it to dispel before he could stab Lancer into the temple and end the battle. Oh, you seem to have a few tricks up your sleeve as well. Naruto smiled. It would have been boring to end things that way. They dashed at each other, kunai clashing against spear, Naruto scoring a few scratches on Lancer but nothing that couldn't be healed with a quick application of prana from his master. Naruto was about to switch gears and had allowed himself to be pushed back to gain some distance in order to use his ninjutsu. When a sound came from the side, Both he and Lancer turned to see a teenager about Rin's age, with auburn hair and amber eyes looking on in shock. Before turning and running, Lancer was hot on his tail. Master? Naruto cast a glance at Rin, who had witnessed what had occurred. Try not to let Lancer kill that guy. Rin spoke urgently. Got it. Naruto faded away. It wasn't difficult to find the boy in the empty and silent school, but Lancer had apparently found him first, given that he was bleeding from a hole in his chest and heart. Rin, I tracked him down. However, you will not enjoy it. Naruto informed her through their telepathic link. Soon after, the Tohsaka Magus arrives and falls to her knees beside the boy. Does he mean anything to you? Naruto inquired. He's Sakura's only true friend. She has romantic feelings for him. Rin replied absently as she examined him. I can't heal this kind of wound. No, but I'd have to give up my father's jewel. She took out the large ruby pendant and looked at it for a few moments before placing it over the wound, where it began to glow. Until Naruto grabbed her hand and pulled her to a halt. What? Rin screamed angrily. I know how to heal him. Naruto simply stated, placing his right hand on the wound. Unnoticed by Rin, a white circle appeared on his palm before golden light flooded the wound and repaired the flesh, making it as good as new. Oh. I forgot you were also a caster. Rin breathed a sigh of relief. You are aware that you are required by the rules to conceal the war from bystanders, correct? And what happens if they witness it? Naruto double-checked. What's the big deal? Rin inquired defensively. Nothing, I'm not usually one to follow those kinds of rules. Naruto smiled. Hey. Rin laughed. Let's get out of here and track Lancer down. She made a decision. Time jump, 1 hour later. You know, Master, something occurred to me just now. Naruto agreed. What exactly is it? Rin inquired telepathically, unable to speak properly due to the wind blowing in her face as she clung to Assassin at speeds that made him appear to be a blur. Did you discover anything about Lancer's identity? No, but it's all about him. Naruto shook his head. It's just. If he tried to kill that guy while witnessing the Grail War, will he do it again if he discovers he has survived? Damn it. Rin sighed. Come to think of it, he appears to be heading straight for Emiya house. Kunz. Is that Emiya-kun? Naruto smiled. My, it appears your sister isn't the only one who likes him, eh? Shut up and quicken your pace. Rin yelled at him in his head. I agree, Master. Naruto laughs. Hold on. He warned her before speeding up even more. Estate Emiya. Emiya Shuru's night had not gone well. First, he had to return to school after realizing halfway home that he had forgotten his school bag. Then he saw a fight between two men who were clearly not human, and he was chased down and killed by one of them for witnessing their fight. Or so he thought, only to wake up with not a scratch on him, but his shirt ruined and soaked in drying blood. To top it all off, once he got home and changed out of his filthy clothes, the blue-haired spearman reappeared to finish the job, chasing him out of the house, through the backyard, and into the shed where he practiced his magecraft. Only for luck to shine upon him as a petite armored blonde wielding an invisible weapon appeared from a magic circle glowing blue that he had never noticed before and drove off the man who had identified himself as Lancer. Then, before he could get any answers about what was going on, the girl, Saber, announced that another servant was approaching and had fled. Following her, he came across Saber attempting to attack a blonde about his age who was holding onto what had to be Saber's invisible weapon with apparent ease, no matter how hard Saber tried to push it towards him, or pull it out of his grip. And, from behind him, there was a ruffled looking. "Tohsaka?" Shuru exclaimed in surprise. "Emiya-kun, good evening." Rin smiled hesitantly, her gaze falling to his left hand, where a red mark lay. "Are you going to let us in? Then you can explain how you appear to be a magus living in my city without my knowledge or permission." Her pupils constricted. "And how did you summon a saber for the Grail War?" "Eh? Sure, come on in," Shuru stated after a few blinks. "Master, they are adversaries, and..." Saber got things started. "Oh, cover it up." Naruto rolled his eyes, finally letting go of the invisible weapon that Saber had been pulling on, causing her to stumble. "If we wanted the kid dead, we'd just let him bleed out back at the school." "You're the ones who rescued me?" Shuru yelled. "Yeah. You should know that broken hearts do not heal on their own," Naruto said dryly. "I am willing to postpone our battle if you have indeed saved my master." Saber finally let go of her sword. Rin appeared to be ready to tear her hair out in frustration 15 minutes later. Despite summoning the saber-class servant she desired, Emiya Shuru was a complete hack as a magus, not even third-rate by most standards given that he couldn't even use the simple restructuring spell, a variant of alteration, to repair the damage to his wall. Saber's summoning had apparently been a stroke of luck, and it had not even been done correctly, as she was apparently stuck in physical form, requiring more prana to keep her presence in this world. "Alright, here's what we're going to do." Rin made a decision. "I'll accompany you to the church so you can speak with the priest. He is the Grail War's supervisor, so you must register your participation with him." "Really? You didn't come there after I summoned you." Naruto brought this up. "My name is Tohsaka. We have a master spot reserved for each war as one of the founding families of the Grail War." Rin shook her head. "And, as the last remaining Tohsaka, it was obvious that I would be a master. Plus, I've known Kotomine for years, and I called him this morning to inform him that I'd summoned my servant." "I see what you mean." Naruto gave a nod. "It would also be preferable if the newbie received an explanation from the supervisor in case he does not trust you, despite the fact that you are another participant." "That would be sufficient." Saber concurred. "Alright." Shuru nodded, perplexed. A few minutes later, Naruto was attempting to hide his amusement as he looked at the irritated Saber, who had been disguised with a yellow raincoat that covered most of her body. "Assassin. Shut up," Saber muttered before turning to face Shuru. "Is this really necessary, master? This is deplorable. Sorry, however, walking around town in your armor would attract a lot of attention." Shuru expressed regret. "And, while you could take it off, it's not exactly a safe time to walk around in the middle of the night unprotected." Naruto elaborated. "It's entirely your fault, Emiya-kun." Rin shook her head. "You certainly messed up her summoning. I wasn't intending to summon Saber in the first place. But I'm glad she showed up." Shuru quickly added to the servant of the sword's grateful look. "Now, Saber. That invisibility around your sword." Naruto began. "What does it matter?" Saber's pupils constricted. "I can tell it's wind-powered." Naruto went on. "Can't you expand it to cover your entire body so you don't have to wear that thing?" Saber paused mid-step to think about it. "Maybe, but I'm not going to do it. It will put more strain on my master's prana reserves, which I would prefer not to do this early in the war," she reached a conclusion. "That's all right." The blonde male shrugged. They eventually arrived at the church, where Saber chose to stand guard outside, trusting Naruto not to harm her master as he followed Shuru and Rin inside. Naruto's eyes had narrowed over the course of the conversation between Rin, Shuru, and Kotomine Kirei. It wasn't because Kotomine didn't behave as he would have expected a priest to. It wasn't even because he was essentially emotionally blackmailing Shuru into participating in the Grail War in order to avoid unnecessary casualties. No, it was entirely due to pure evil. Negative emotions in Naruto, his senses enabled him to detect the energy emanating from Kotomine Kirei. He'd felt something similar within Matu Sakura, but it was distilled and dormant in her. It was wrapped around him like a cloak in this man, this so-called priest that Rin rightly called fake, and Kotomine seemed all too comfortable with it. Is there a problem, assassin? Kotomine inquired after convincing Shuru to participate despite appearing to offer him sanctuary in the church. I'm not sure. You tell me. Naruto fired back. Would you mind telling me why you have command spells on you? He decided to ask, making it appear as if this was the reason he was suspicious. You mean these? Kotomine nodded, lifting his sleeve to reveal a slew of command spells covering his right arm. Not to worry, these are simply dormant command spells from previous Grail Wars. At times, the supervisor may offer one or more as a reward to the masters in exchange for assisting in keeping the Grail War secret. My father did so during the previous war, when the caster summoned a monstrous creature that threatened not only the war, but magecraft as a whole. I see. For a split second, I thought you had your own servant. Naruto burst out laughing. Of course not, because the church supervisor must remain impartial. Kotomine laughed. Naruto noticed how the man spewed lie after lie, but remained silent and followed the two masters outside, then away from the church. I want you two to stay as far away from Kotomine as possible. When Naruto felt they were close enough, he said seriously. What exactly do you mean? Shuru blinked, perplexed. That man exudes evil. Naruto stated solemnly. In my time, I've met incarnations of hatred that didn't feel nearly as bad as that man. More than that, he's lying through his teeth about himself being a neutral party in the war and having his own servant. Are you sure? Rin insisted. Positive, I have a skill that allows me to perceive negative emotions in others. It is simple to use as a lie detector. Naruto stated solemnly. This is concerning. Saber smirked. He is extremely dangerous because he has over a dozen extra command spells. Naruto elaborated. Even if his servant has a high-energy noble phantasm, he can use it repeatedly by sacrificing those command spells. If used correctly, he could end the war in a matter of hours, if not minutes. He also has master experience. Rin chimed in. He was the master of assassin in the previous Grail War, but he was killed early on. At the very least, he can only use those additional command spells on his own servant. Naruto mumbled. Kotomine needs to stay at the church, ostensibly so that he can offer asylum to other masters, so if we manage to take out his servant, whoever it is, they will be useless to him. The question now is, who is his servant? Saber raised his voice. Saber and Assassin are obviously unavailable. I discovered Rider and Berserker were summoned by the other two founding families by gathering information since I was summoned. Naruto pondered. Caster, Archer, and Lancer are the only survivors. I'm hoping it's Lancer. What's the deal? And are you certain that the Einsburn summoned Berserker? Rin inquired. Yeah, I saw a cute little girl who looked like an Einsburn homunculus talking to an astralized Berserker. Naruto gave a nod. As for Caster and Archer, they are collaborating and are based at the temple. I appreciate the compliment, assassin. A young female voice from nearby called out, causing them to come to a halt and turn to face the source. Sure enough, the Ainsburn master Naruto had just described appeared, wearing a purple coat and matching hat and smiling at them. Good day, Oni-chan. She smiled as she approached Shuru. It's a pleasure to meet you. Ilya is my name. Hello, my name is Ilya. The young albino girl made an introduction. Eh? Shuru's eyes blinked. Won't you understand who I am after I tell you my full name is Ilyasviel von Ainsburn? She grinned. This is the Ainsburn master, then. Rin tensed up. That's correct. Ilya agreed. But there's something I've been looking forward to even more than finding the Holy Grail. That is. Her smile had become dangerous. I'm going to kill you, Oni-chan. She stated. You know who I am? Shuru inquired, perplexed. You know, I've been waiting for this day to come for a long time. Ilya stated this. That's why, Oni-chan, I'm going to kill you gently. She smiled. Come. The Berserker. She yelled. A giant of a man with dark skin and a wild mane of dark hair who wore only an armored skirt materialized at her side, causing Rin and Shuru to freeze in place. This individual. It's almost as strong as what I felt from Killer Bee when he used the blood shroud. Naruto pondered. I'm not sure I'd give him that much credit, Naruto. Gyuki, the Hachibi, a part of the blonde ninja, commented. Perhaps, but I might need some assistance with him. Naruto agreed. Kurama? Naruto, go for it. The Kyuubi no Kitsune, Kurama, agreed to lend his power. What's the matter? Ilya mocked. If you're just going to stand there, we'll just take the initiative and strike first. Berserker, charge. Crush all of them. Berserker lunged with a deafening roar. Master, take a step back. Saber exclaimed as she moved to intercept Berserker's descending crude stone axe sword with her own invisible blade, and then engaged the Servant of Madness in battle, despite being gradually pushed back by his superior strength. Now, Master. Hurry. During a lull in the fighting, she gave Shuru a serious look, which completely escaped the boy's notice. Rin, on the other hand, got the hint and grabbed Shuru's hand, starting to pull him away and run. Emiya-kun, we're going to have to flee now. As she dragged him away, she told him. What? Shuru yelled. Tohsaka, hold on. We can't just abandon her and flee on our own. He objected. You fool, don't you realize? Rin responded angrily. By standing there, we're just getting in the way. Saber is perfectly capable of finding a chance to retreat by herself. What we need to do is retreat for a while and plan some countermeasures against Berserker. We have no chance of winning this battle unless we do this. That could be true. But Shuru began obstinately. Where are you two attempting to flee to? Ilya inquired, amused, as she appeared in their path. Isn't it rash to just leave me behind by myself? Were you planning a strategic meeting or something? Or maybe you've already thought of something brilliant, she pondered. But it won't make a difference. You will never defeat Berserker. She stated. He is, after all, Heracles. The greatest Greek hero of all time. Heracles? Rin's eyes widened with fear. The spirits of heroes who have been summoned to the present world are known as servants. Rin, you're aware of this, aren't you? Ilya stated this. The magnitude of their recognition with the people of this time influences the extent of their existence here as spirits. Therefore, Emiya smiled, if a hero's name is widely known throughout the world, that hero's strength as a servant will be increased. That explains why no one can compete with my Heracles. He considers your saber and assassin to be minorities, exclaimed she. I must disagree. As Naruto appeared behind Emiya, with a kunai around her neck. Assassin? I assumed you were assisting Saber with Berserker. Rin burst out laughing. Nah. Naruto raised his head. You can tell she's a knight just by looking at her armor. Samurai values honor, chivalry, and all that. If I get involved in her fight, she'll be more likely to attack me. Even so. Rin sighed. Besides, just because I agreed not to kill the boy and not to attack Saber tonight doesn't mean I'm going to save her. Naruto elaborated. Things would have been different if I had been alive and she had also been alive, but we're both servants here. Nothing will change if she dies. Just one less servant for me to take out in order to obtain the Grail. He shook his head. Speaking of which. He turned his gaze to Emiya, who had been warily eyeing the kunai, particularly the coating of white energy that made her nervous. I have a request for you. To order Berserker's death? Emiya's pupils constricted. Nah. If Saber doesn't kill him, I'll go head to head with him. I'm an assassin, but that doesn't make me a coward. You see, I have a bravery skill for a reason. Naruto comforted her. Huh? That's unexpected. Emiya blinked, perplexed. So, what do you want? The Holy Grail. Naruto grinned. The Lesser Grail, in particular, that the Ainsburn are supposed to provide for each war. I know it won't help me until the other 6 servants are dead, but I'd feel much better if it was in my hands, given that, according to Rin's father's journal, the reason the Third Grail War failed was because the Lesser Grail was damaged at some point. Then it's best to get this knife out of my neck. Emiya gave a thin smile. Why? Because you'd refuse to respond? Naruto cocked his chin. Due to the fact that I am the Lesser Grail. Emiya responded. The Ainsburn agreed with you that the Lesser Grail should be kept safer, so rather than being an inanimate object, the Lesser Grail became a person capable of defending herself beginning with the last war. Irisville from Ainsburn. Naruto expressed his realization. That was his role in the previous war, with Emiya Kuritsugu being the actual Ainsburn master. What was Dad? Shuru yelled. Everyone looked at him with interest. You didn't realize? Emiya inquired, surprised. Was the Magus killer your father? Rin was taken aback. Are you really that ignorant of everything in the supernatural world, kid? Naruto raised his head. An explosion occurred before any further conversation could take place, and when the dust settled, they found Saber in a small crater. Saber. Shuru screamed in fear. Master, please, get away. Saber said as she began to push herself up. It would not be in time, however, as Berserker approached, his axe sword raised. Shuru jumped in front of Saber at the last second to shield her, causing Berserker's strike to tear a chunk from the left side of his torso. What is this? He wondered aloud, looking down at the blood on his left hand. Ah, I see. I attempted to move Saber away from Berserker's blow. As he collapsed in Saber's arms, he realized. Master. Saber screamed in terror and shock. Why, Master, have you done this? Master. Emiya-kun. Rin exclaimed in surprise. You know. For someone who got exactly what she wanted, you don't seem too pleased with this. Naruto whispered to Emiya, who was staring at the scene in bemusement. It's not what I was expecting. Emiya agreed. Isn't it revenge that guides you? Naruto pondered. Yes, I recognize that desperate look in your eyes. I saw it too many times in the eyes of my best friend, my biological brother. He threw everything away in his quest for vengeance on his older brother, dedicating his entire life to it since he was a 7-year-old child. And when he finally got it, he was left empty, with almost nothing, and it drove him insane, increasing his hatred. Because that was all he had left. Naruto sighed sadly, looking down at his left palm, where the black moon sigil lay. He'd gotten it automatically after Sasuke died at Kaguya's hands, a precautionary measure left by the Sage of Six Paths to ensure that if one of them died, the other would still have the tools to seal the rabbit goddess. Of course, discovering after he murdered his brother that everything he had done was for the sake of his little brother, to protect him. That didn't help his mental stability at all. He agreed. What are you attempting to convey to me? Emiya insisted. Getting vengeance tends to leave you empty. Naruto shook his head. Tell me. What will happen to you when the Grail is finished? Emiya averted his gaze. I see. Naruto frowned in annoyance. Do something, Naruto. Rin screamed in fear. No, the blonde stated flatly. What? Rin insisted. He either wants to die or is too stupid to live. Naruto fixed his gaze on the bloodied adolescent. That kid has no sense of self-preservation. If I had to guess, it stems from survivor's guilt from living through the Great Fuyuki fire, which he and Kotomine discussed in the church. If that's the case, he'll put himself in danger again and again throughout this war. If he survives here, I'm not going to babysit him just to make sure he doesn't jump in front of another servant's attack, he stated emphatically. But. Rin stuttered, her gaze drawn to her command spells. Plus, he'll be just fine. As an afterthought, Naruto added. If you look at his wound, you'll notice it's gradually healing. Eh? Rin did so, and the massive wound began to heal. With that out of the way, and Saber being too busy to look after Mr. Suicide over there, Naruto shifted his focus away from Emiya and toward Berserker. I finally get a chance to play Berserker here. Do you really want to go head-to-head with Berserker? Emiya asked, perplexed. What sort of idiot assassin are you? One of your Heracles is terribly outmatched against. Naruto clenched his fists. After all, Godslayers like me have an advantage over divine beings, even if they are only demigods like him. He stated. Naruto, please stop revealing your secrets. Rin chided angrily, having calmed down now that she knew Shuru would survive. You're a talker, using my name so casually. Naruto fired back. What is your name, Naruto? Emiya inquired. I'm not familiar with you. She grudgingly admitted. If you did, I'd be very surprised. I lived prior to what you call the Age of the Gods. Naruto shook his head. What happened before the Age of the Gods? Emiya asked, perplexed. Then. No one knows anything about you. Your fame boost should be close to nil. True. I'm glad I always relied on my own strength before relying on power boosts, eh? Naruto smiled. Of course, because servants are linked to Akasha via the Grail, they can obtain information on other servants once they have a name. It's a shame you have an insane berserker, eh? He'd tell you nothing but nonsense. You. Ilya huffed angrily. Let's get started. Naruto vanished, as did Berserker, who was punched away with such force that he was blasted into the sky. What the? Ilya gaped as Heracles, her over 300 kilograms Berserker, was smacked away like a fly. Everyone on the ground remained vigilant as, far away and high into the sky, where Berserker had been dispatched and Naruto pursued, there was a sudden flash of golden light that lasted only a few seconds before dying out, at which point Ilya gasped in shock and horror. And no. The Berserker. She sighed, tears welling up in her eyes. I'm afraid he's no longer alive, little lady. Naruto acknowledged as he landed in a crouch a few meters away, the asphalt cratering beneath him. But he had a total of 12 lives. He was invincible. Ilya objected. By the time I caught up to him, he was already healed. Naruto agreed. Flashback. What the hell happened? When Naruto reached the same altitude as Berserker, he noticed that the caved-in chest that had crushed his heart had already healed completely. Even I don't heal that quickly. This is comparable to the Edo Tensei's ability to restore. He grimaced as, even as they neared the peak of their flight, Berserker turned to glare bloody murder at him. Well, if he's anything like the Edo Tensei, I have something that prevents regeneration. He made a decision. 6 Paths Senjutsu. He yelled, unconcerned about being overheard all the way up there, not even by Berserker with the wind in his ears. In response to his words, that noble phantasm activated, allowing him to enter the 6 Paths Sage mode, which transformed his attire into black pants and undershirt with a golden chakra jacket on top, his body energized by the 6 Paths Senjutsu chakra, and 10 black orbs manifesting behind him like a halo. 2 of the orbs flew at Berserker, who futilely tried to block with his stone weapon, only for the 2 truth-seeking balls to pierce the thing and continue on without even slowing down. 1 pierced Berserker's chest, destroying his heart, while the other transformed into a disc that beheaded him. Naruto stood guard, ready to use the remaining 8 truth-seeking balls to defend himself if the attack proved insufficient, even as he mentally recalled the 2 he had used, but to his relief, Berserker's body disintegrated into prana and faded, indicating his final death. End of flashback. But this did not make him immortal, only extremely durable. I've fought immortals before, and I know the difference. Naruto informed her. No way, Ilya passed out. How about you take a nap right now, Naruto suggested this as he appeared behind her in a burst of speed and knocked her out by pinching a nerve cluster in her neck. What are you planning to do with this place? Rin was curious. She is the lesser Grail, as she stated. We can't let her run around unattended. Naruto elaborated. After we drop Saber and the idiot off at his place, we'll bring Ilya back here to your house. Wait a minute there, assassin. Saber got things started. Of course, Saber, if you think you'll have better luck against me than you did against Berserker, feel free to try to claim her now. Naruto posed a challenge. Saber recoils, her teeth clenched. Fighting someone who had apparently killed Berserker 12 times in half the time it took Berserker to beat her into the ground was more than just foolish, especially with her master still nearby and in mortal danger. Well, assassin, we'll fight another day. Saber frowned. I'll be busy tomorrow, so maybe the next day? Naruto made an offer. We'll have to see. Saber's pupils constricted. It was a little difficult to get Shuru home without being seen, but they did it, and Naruto practically dragged Rin back to her mansion. What exactly is the big idea, Naruto? Rin insisted. We were being observed. Naruto stated unequivocally. And, because this person appeared to be more interested in Saber, I decided a tactical retreat was in order. What? Rin inquired, surprised. My clones noticed him from a distance. He seemed intrigued by how quickly I dispatched Berserker, but it was too far away for him to see how I did it, so he returned his attention to Saber. But I doubt he'll attack her. His gaze on her seemed possessive. Naruto reached a conclusion. What was its identity? How did he appear? Rin inquired as he placed Emiya on a couch. Unless I'm mistaken, he's the archer your father summoned for the last Grail War, Gilgamesh, the king of heroes, says the narrator. Naruto has been revealed. He certainly fits the description, both in terms of power and appearance, even if he is not currently wearing his golden armor. What? There is no such thing. He couldn't have survived a decade without a master, even with the independent action skill that all archers have. Rin exclaimed loudly. Given that he went to the Kotomine church after the battle, he could have had a master all along, especially since Kotomine worked with your father in the previous war. This also explains which servant Kotomine has control over. Naruto agreed. I see. Rin frowned but slowly nodded. Gilgamesh possessed a high level of independent action. After my father was killed here, he most likely went and made a deal with Kirei. Did your father die here? Naruto inquired, surprised. Yes, the boundaries were broken, and he was discovered dead in his study. Assassinated from behind. Rin frowned. And given that Emiya is known to be capable of such deeds and that he survived the war long enough to destroy the Grail. Wait a minute, hold on. Naruto elaborated. He destroyed the Grail? He asked, perplexed. Of course, the one from the Fourth War. Rin elaborated. Don't worry, the Ainsburn supply new ones every war. Yes, this time it's Emiya. Naruto gave a nod. But I meant why? He insisted. He had to be close enough to claim it if he was close enough to destroy it. Who in their right mind would throw away such a wish? I'm not sure, but the Great Fuyuki fire was the result of this. The contents of the Grail spilled and caught fire, killing everyone within a few blocks radius. This is why the war has come so soon. The prana accumulated in the Grail was not dispersed as it should have been, but instead spilled back into the ley lines and fed back into the Grail system. Rin elaborated. At the very least, that's the best conclusion I could come up with. There's something seriously fishy going on here. Naruto smirked. To obtain the Grail, Emiya used every dirty trick in the book. He had a replacement pose as his servant's master, bombed a hotel to kill the enemy master living on the top floor, and who knows what else, and then he throws away the Grail. I require responses. And I need them right now, damn it. Rinnegan. His eyes flashed purple, with ripple-like rings and 3 black tomo on each of the innermost 2 rings. He approached Emiya, removed her hat, and grabbed her head with his right hand. Human journey. He said calmly as he grasped Emiya's soul. And his eyes widened at the wealth of information that resulted from it. It wasn't just Emiya's personal memories. No. It was rather the memories of every Justice model homunculus that had been coined prior to Emiya's birth, beginning with the original, Justice Lizrek von Einsburn, the Holy Maiden of Winter, who had helped found the Holy Grail War and became the very core of the Grail system. However, much to Naruto's dismay, Emiya had no idea why Kuritsugu, her father, had destroyed the Grail, and she didn't care. She despised the man for never returning for her and rescuing her from the clutches of the Einsburn, where she had endured a decade of operation after operation, each reducing her lifespan in exchange for making her a more suitable lesser Grail and master for the Grail War. As things stood, even if she survived the war, she wouldn't live much longer than a year. She also despised Kuritsugu for adopting Shuru and, in effect, replacing her with the boy. In addition, Naruto discovered the true workings of the Grail and the Greater Grail system. How the Grail would materialize after absorbing the power of 6 servants, but in rare cases some servants would be more powerful, enough to substitute another sacrifice, as happened in the previous war when the Grail materialized while the Archer and Saber, Gilgamesh and Artoria Pendragon, who also happened to be the Saber in this war, explaining Gilgamesh's interest, were still alive and fighting over it. And how the true purpose of the command spells was to force the servant to commit suicide, allowing the Greater Grail to activate the Heavens Feel ritual and open a portal to Akasha. Overall, the only anomaly he could see was that during the Third War, the Ainsburn replaced the Berserker class in their attempt to summon the divine spirit Angra Mainyu, the Zoroastrian god of darkness, but it failed, and the resulting servant was weak, being killed early in the war. Damn it. Naruto scowled, releasing Ilya's soul and switching off his Rinnegan. Assassin? Rin inquired, perplexed. What exactly did you do? I basically took her soul and saw all of her memories. Everything is now copied in here. He tapped his chin. The issue is that Ilya has no idea why her father, Emiya Kuritsugu, destroyed the Grail. Doesn't care much, either, because she'll die when the Grail is finished, and if not then, in a year. For a decade, the Ainsburn have experimented on her in order to create a more compatible Master and Lesser Grail, drastically shortening her already short lifespan. He smirked. I see. Rin gave the girl a pitying look. So, what now? You'll be relieved to learn that the saber of this war is the same as it was the last time, King Arthur, or rather Artoria Pendragon. Shuru also most likely has Avalon, the Excalibur sheath, implanted in him. Power. It's most likely how he summoned her in the first place. Naruto elaborated. That's unexpected. Rin blinked several times. A girl, King Arthur. She muttered something. Anyhow, do you think you can beat her? It's not a problem. She doesn't appear to have been summoned at full strength. Naruto shook his head. Excellent. What about the Holy Grail? Rin inquired. Well, isn't it convenient that Matu Zoken, one of the Grail War's founders, is still alive and well in this city? Naruto grinned. Later that night, after Rin had fallen asleep and was being watched over by a dozen clones, as was Ilya, Naruto crept outside and under a tree on the Tohsaka's property before sitting in a lotus position and closing his eyes once he made a few more clones to alert him in case of an attack on his person. Even though his time in Sage Mode had been brief, he had felt it all too well. The world's, Gaia's, pure hatred for humans was staggering, surpassing even Kurama's most venomous outburst. Had it been him in life, Naruto would not have been able to handle it, let alone simply ignore it while using senjutsu without hesitation. But this him, the heroic spirit whose legend claimed to have conquered the hatred of the entire world. That was something entirely different. With a sigh, he sank into the Six Paths Senjutsu's initial state, allowing only his eyes to change beneath his eyelids as he drew the heavily tainted natural energy into himself. He circulated it through his body, then separated it into two distinct uneven portions as he expelled it through his hands back outside his body. Through the white Sun Yang symbol in his right palm came purified natural energy, free of any taint, while through the black moon yin symbol in his left palm came the taint that had contaminated the energy he had taken in, with barely any energy attached, merely an ugly black mist that began to swirl into a sphere in Naruto's left palm. This will be a long night. Naruto considered this as he mentally directed a few of the clones he had already created to erect a barrier that would obstruct sensory abilities. Time travel, that morning. Rin was unconcerned when one of her servant's clones informed her that Assassin was outside meditating. What's the point? Why should she be concerned when both she and Emiya were clearly being protected by the clones and he himself was nearby? As a result, as she approached him after leaving the house, she dropped to her knees and gagged, vomiting up the breakfast she had just eaten after unknowingly passing the boundary of the barrier the clones still maintained. Naruto. What is that? Rin asked, horrified by the enormous sphere of swirling darkness that her servant held in the palm of his raised left hand above his head. The thing was several times the size of her house, and whatever had kept her from feeling it until she got close was most likely the only thing keeping the rest of Fuyuki City from seeing it. This is a large part of Gaia's hatred for humanity, Rin. Naruto sighed tiredly, his lips set in a sad smile. As a sage, I can draw on the world's natural energy, or mana as it's known these days, to empower myself. But it also brings the world's will, which in this case is hatred for the humans who are destroying the planet. He elaborated. How? How do you do it? Rin said quietly. I was surrounded by hatred from the moment I was born, and it only got worse over time. But I overcame it, and thanks to my legend, which states that I overcame the hatred of the entire world, which was actually due to me being the catalyst of bringing peace after a millennium of continuous conflict, I can do it now as well, despite this hatred being far, far worse than anything I had to endure in the past. I see. Muttered Rin. How are you going to use that? Naruto smirked as his Rinnegan activated once more before closing his right eye and focusing his left on the massive sphere of spiraling hatred. A pinprick of light appeared within the black sphere, slowly but steadily shrinking until it was fully sucked into what was revealed to be a small golden portal that closed once its job was completed. Did you send it somewhere? Rin inquired, perplexed. From the other side of the world. Naruto responded. There are no humans here, and the creatures there will be unbothered by hatred directed at humanity because it will have no effect on them in the least. He rose and stretched. And to think, that was only about a quarter of Gaia's aversion to humans. The next 3 nights are going to be terrible. He finished with a groan. Are you going to do it again? Rin inquired, surprised. Yeah, until it's all gone. Naruto has confirmed this. This is not my time, so making any tangible changes would not feel right. But I believe I can at least lighten the burden on humanity's shoulders. I see. You know, you never told me what your Grail wish is. Rin became aware. I want a second chance at life. Back in the day, the odds were stacked against me, and people had been out for my blood since before I was born. I worked my tail off every day, not only to survive, but also to save the world and bring peace. And, apparently, I succeeded in the end. But did I ever get to enjoy any of it? I left with a bang. Naruto grinned bitterly. So you want to be reborn? Or do you want to change the past? Rin inquired. Neither. Naruto raised his head. What's done is done, and I'm not going to spit on my own accomplishments or the sacrifices I and my friends made to achieve them. Living in this era would also not feel right. I could easily fit in, and I know I could, but I don't want to. No, what I wanted was to be reincarnated as an Uzumaki Naruto in a world parallel to my own while retaining my current power and knowledge and being able to grow beyond that if I trained enough. Preferably in a world where I would find it easier to live. Before shrugging, he added as an afterthought. I realize it's a selfish wish. I could wish to end world hunger or to achieve world peace, but having already accomplished the latter, I know its worth and will not diminish it with a wish. If the people of this era want peace and prosperity, they must work for it, he stated emphatically. Just getting Gaia off their backs for a while is enough help. Wait a minute, when you said, take Gaia off their backs. Rin's eyes widened as she cast a spell, gasping at the ensuing fireball. Magecraft rejection has been reduced. If you keep this up, Magecraft will be as powerful as it was during the Age of the Gods. That so? Naruto grinned. So, you're welcome. Please excuse me as I need to shower after a long night of community service. I'm disgusted. My clones can safely accompany you to school, and I'll catch up with you soon enough. Wait a minute, it's getting late. Rin realized this after checking her watch and rising to her feet, dusting herself off. Naruto, too. Thank you so much, I truly appreciate it. Rin laughed. It's my pleasure. Naruto gestured behind him. Naruto, on the other hand, did not go to school after his quick shower. He had sensed it after being sufficiently immersed in sage mode and after the natural energy surrounding Fuyuki and its surroundings had been purified. The same pure evil he had sensed within Kotomine Kirei and, to a lesser extent, Matu Sakura existed deep beneath Mount Enzo, precisely where the Greater Grail system was inscribed. It was now clear to him why Emiya Kuritsugu had destroyed the Holy Grail for which he had sacrificed his wife. It had been corrupted in some way. As a result, Naruto needed to act quickly, while there was still time to correct the situation and certainly before the Grail manifested in its corrupted form. He had examined Ilya's body and discovered that the lesser Grail in her was not corrupted, but it was linked to the Greater Grail, which was. If enough servants perished, the taint could seep into her and corrupt her lesser Grail as well. As a result, Naruto had to take action. He couldn't go under the mountain yet because he didn't know what he'd find there, so he had to gather information first. Matu Sakura was at the top of his priority list. True, she had the least taint of those contaminated, but that could simply make it easier to figure out what it was. And he could at the very least do something about it. As a result, after finishing helping out at the school's archery club before classes began for the day and changing back into her school uniform, Sakura discovered a hand covering her mouth, preventing her from screaming, followed by a pinching sensation on her neck, and all she knew was darkness. Meanwhile, Naruto set up an examination area in the center of Rin's living room, having had the clones clean up the aftermath of his summoning and repair the roof to the best of their abilities. What are you up to? Ilya inquired, having been awakened and fed breakfast before being led to him by the clones who were keeping an eye on her. I'm getting ready to examine a girl who has the same infection as the Greater Grail. Naruto simply stated while drawing more and more seals on the floor. Infected? What exactly do you mean? Ilya insisted. Something evil lurks beneath Mount Enzo in the Greater Grail. I felt it last night while using one of my abilities to sense the entire city. It's most likely why your father destroyed the Grail during the last war. It infected it as well. Naruto responded. Are you certain? Ilya inquired. No. That's why I'm looking into those who have been infected with it before attempting to deal with the Greater Grail. I never imagined something so heinous existed. Naruto grimaced and shook his head. So, who exactly is this girl? Ilya inquired, taking a seat in a nearby chair. Matu Sakura, the true Matu master, is the reason for summoning the rider of this war. Matu Shinji, his stepbrother, is acting as master and giving rider orders, but Sakura has the actual command spells. She only had 2, so she probably used one to make rider obey that jerk Shinji. Naruto elaborated. You're surprisingly open with information. Ilya expressed surprise. Because I have a proposition for you, Ilyasville von Einsburn. Naruto grinned. Half an hour later, the kidnapper clone arrived, carrying Sakura, and placed her in the center of the Fuinjutsu array Naruto had drawn on the floor. Let's see what we've got here. He used his Rinnegan to look at the unconscious girl. This is... Naruto was stunned and horrified. What's the matter with her? Emiya tensed. The relaxed and self-assured assassin had never been caught off guard before. There are things within her body. What are these? Magecraft-enhanced worms? Naruto fixed his gaze. Her organs, bones, and nerves were all over her body. They've burrowed into her and replaced many of her bodily functions, and appear to be feeding on her prana. That sounds like crestworms to me. Emiya was disgusted. The lowest of acquaintances. There's more to it. The taint in her is focused on her heart. Naruto paused, an angry expression on his face. What? Emiya applied pressure. Whoever did this appeared to be attempting to turn her heart into a makeshift lesser Grail. It's a pale shadow of your own, but it could probably function as one. However, it is obviously more limited. Naruto responded. Matsu Zoken. Emiya frowned. He is the only person who could have done it. In addition, there is a particularly large worm near her heart that contains a human soul and is about 2 centuries old. That's most likely his soul. Naruto elaborated. How could he? Emiya inquired, surprised. It's probably how he survived this long. Naruto snarled. Using other people's bodies as hosts. In my time, there was a man who did the same thing. What are your plans? Emiya inquired. First and foremost, let us see what Sakura knows about this. Naruto made a statement. He placed a hand on her head and used his human path to grasp his soul, assimilating his memories. As well as gauged, Matsu Zoken will be erased. Nothing of him will be left to pass on, not even a speck of his wretched soul. Matsu Shinji, too. He growled. An assassin? Emiya inquired, terrified. It took Naruto a few moments to realize what had alarmed her so much, and he realized he had unconsciously activated one of his noble phantasms out of rage, specifically the Jinchuriki Form 1, Chakra Cloak, which had already gone up to the 5th tail by the time he calmed down and turned it off. She was thrown into the literal worm pit that Zoken calls a workshop and had her body defiled by thousands upon thousands of crestworms almost nightly since she was adopted by the Matsu from the Tohsaka when she was 11 years ago. Naruto's rage was uncontrollable. Males and females are affected differently by the worms. They eat the bone marrow of males, making them frail and, in some cases, causing permanent damage to parts of the body. Females, on the other hand, eat parts of her womb, and the ones in her blood also act as an aphrodisiac. Furthermore, they demanded more prana than her body could produce, so Zoken had Shinji rape her since her first period and continue to do so on a regular basis, so she could obtain prana from his sperm. He spat. Damn, she had it worse than I did. Emiya muttered something. So, what are you going to do? For a few moments, Naruto remained silent as he examined the Fuinjutsu or A beneath Sakura. With the exception of the crest worm, which holds Zuken's soul and which Sakura is unaware of, all of the other worms are currently dormant. Have been for a few days now, most likely since she summoned Rider, who is, as I suspected, Medusa. Naruto made a remark. Even if she's destroyed, she'll be fine as long as I don't mess with the big one near the heart. However, because many of them are intertwined with her nerves, normal surgical extraction is out of the question. Perhaps I can transmute them into something safe. Emiya made the offer. It could work. Naruto slowly nodded. However, it could also set off something we weren't aware of. His head shook. No, they must all be disposed of at once, preferably immediately. If I had a good enough mental image of her body and a large enough supply of prana, I could probably use my wishcraft to get it done. Emiya pondered. No, that is not a good idea. It could set off something in the tainted fake Lesser Grail. Naruto quickly denied. No, I understand how to do it. But first, I must assassinate Rider. There appears to be a link between the servant contract and the Crestworms. I'm not sure what it is, and I'd rather not risk it. What about not wanting to rush through the process of completing the Grail? Emiya brought this up. A second dead servant will make little difference. Furthermore, unlike your Heracles, the form Medusa was summoned in was not her best. She is worth the same as an average servant, but Heracles is worth twice as much. Things should be fine as long as 3 more servants don't die before I can cleanse the Greater Grail, or 2, with one being particularly strong. Naruto exhaled a sigh. If you say so, Emiya said, shrugging. The way things are going, this Grail War might end sooner than I thought. Naruto pondered before gathering a slew of Kage Bunshin and leading them outside. I'm just having them pick up where Rin left off. You want them to get rid of Gaia's hatred of humans? Emiya inquired, having been told what he had been up to while they waited for Sakura. Yes. I'll need to be present to send it to the reverse side of the world, but they can do the gathering and filtering on their own. They will also work much faster because there are so many more of them. Naruto stood up and nodded. Will you look after Sakura? I've got to get to school. Rider is probably nearby, keeping an eye out for Shinji. Sure. Emiya shrugged, his gaze fixed on the unconscious girl. Rin seemed to have decided to take matters into her own hands after school regarding one Emiya Shuru who had come to school without his servant. Remember, we can't afford to lose Saber at this point. Naruto forewarned. Even though she was summoned incorrectly, she is still worth the same as 2 regular servants. Don't worry, my gander will simply knock him out or make him feel so bad that he wishes he had been knocked out. Rin comforted him. Then I can use his command spells to augment Saber's firepower. Fine, but if things don't seem to be working out, I'll step in. Naruto stated emphatically. Rin, as expected, could not bring herself to seriously harm Shuru, allowing him to prolong the fight by fleeing or blocking her attacks with reinforced objects used as makeshift shields. Their little chase through the school, however, came to an end when an area effect spell was cast all over the place, draining the energy of the occupants and forcing them to put off their confrontation for the time being in favor of finding the culprit or, at the very least, a way to stop it. Surprisingly, Shuru was the one who tracked down the culprit, Rider, while Naruto and Rin were duped into visiting another magic sigil on the roof that was merely a decoy. When the two arrived, Rider was fighting Saber, who had either been summoned there by Shuru via command spell or had had more sense than her foolish master and pursued him at school despite his personal desires. I need to act quickly before she notices me and astralizes to flee. Naruto made a decision, his Rinnegan flashing to life and forming a familiar jutsu in his hand. Iminate Hikara. He exclaimed as he teleported behind and above Rider, who was in midair facing downwards and thus unable to dodge if she even sensed him. Which, unfortunately for her, she did not. Wakusei Rasengan. He exclaimed as he slammed it into Rider's back, blasting her into the ground and causing a minor earthquake. Well done, assassin. Rin praised herself after she had calmed down. That was certainly impressive. Saber agreed. I appreciate it. Naruto grinned. There is only one more thing to do now. As he teleported behind Shuru, who was already being held by a couple of clones or kunai point, he stated. Saber yelled angrily, assassin. Who are you? Rin started. Rin, I told you. If you do not resolve this, I will step in. Naruto cut her off after scanning the boy's mind with the human path and removing his hand from his head. Tell me, Saber, have you ever wondered why you're not getting any prana from this guy? He asked as he turned to face the servant of the sword. How does that work? Saber got things started. The reason is straightforward, he is not a magus. Naruto told her straight out. He is able to use a little reinforcement because he cannibalized his nerves to create makeshift temporary magic circuits that fail as soon as he uses them, if not sooner. It's impossible. Saber was taken aback and horrified by his recklessness. She knew a thing or two about magecraft, having been raised in part by Merlin, even if she didn't personally practice it. Yes, he would normally be long dead or crippled. This is why he is still alive, and why he summoned you in particular. Naruto reached into Shuru's body and pulled out a golden sheath that Saber was well acquainted with. Avalon? She asked, surprised. What exactly is that? What is the point of this? Shuru inquired, perplexed. It's easy, brat. Naruto stated unequivocally. Do you recall how your father refused to teach you magecraft? Because you are not a magus. Magi are born with magic circuits that are extensions of their souls. Magic circuits do not exist. You're not a wizard. You're a hack and a want-toby. And your involvement in the Grail War comes to an end here. He pressed his body against the back of the boy. Keiyaku Fuin, in Japanese. He said something. Wait, what did you do? Shuru was taken aback. I severed your frail connection with Saber. Furthermore, you will not require these. Shuru's command spells were transferred to Naruto's hand as he pressed his hand against Shuru's. Saber has become my servant. He directed some power into the three sigils, solidifying their bond. I am impossible. Saber exclaimed angrily. I have a tendency to do that, yes. Naruto smiled before releasing Shuru and pushing him away. You're free to go, brat. This is no longer an issue for you. Remember that the next time you try to make magic circuits out of your nerves, you will most likely die or become a vegetable. You can't expect me to simply abandon Saber. Shuru became enraged. If you want to stay, it will be for good. I've already dug your grave. And I can order Saber to place you there. Naruto gave him a malicious smirk. Shuru, flee. Saber told him, and he reluctantly obeyed. At least that's over with. Naruto's evil smile faded, and his gaze was drawn to the crater. Damn, I really need to hide that. He formed some hand seals, and the earth began to move, smoothing out and concealing the evidence of the battle within seconds. Was what you said true, Naruto? What about him transforming his nerves into phony circuits? Rin inquired warily. Yes. Naruto gave a nod. Hopefully, now that he knows, he'll stop. But what if he doesn't? Rin pressed the button. Then he'll die, which is still a better outcome. Naruto stated unequivocally. What? Demanded the pigtailed magus angrily. Rin, he has a reality marble. Naruto raised his head. It's not finished yet, but if he's allowed to delve deeper into the world of magic, either the Mages Association will notice and issue him a ceiling designation, turning him into a lab rat at best, or a dead apostle will turn him because reality marbles are most commonly found in inhuman creatures like them, making him a useful pawn for whoever turns him. That's, Rin couldn't think of anything to say. You're nicer than I thought. Saber agreed. Artoria Pendragon, I did not become the savior of the world by being evil. Naruto laughed. So you were aware of my identity? The blonde exhaled a sigh. How did you learn? Father took part in the last Grail War and kept track of the servants who took part. Rin elaborated. Oh, I should have thought of that. Saber exhaled a sigh. Still. She regarded Naruto with suspicion. How do you manage to be a master? A servant should not be able to do so, she emphasized. I have the double summon ability. It means I was summoned with caster abilities as well. Naruto elaborated. So, how irritated are you right now? Probably less than I should. Saber frowned. However, while I agree that Shuru should be removed from the war in the world of magic, I am disappointed that I am no longer able to claim the Grail. You mean it again? Naruto's smirk made her stiffen. I know everything about the previous war and what Kuritsugu forced you to do. I'll tell you all about it when we get to Rin's house. My work has only recently begun. He exhaled a sigh. However, neither Rin nor Saber were surprised to find a knocked-out Sakura, naked and spread eagle in the middle of a fuinjutsu array that resembled a pentagram with lit candles in the corners. He didn't, however, blame them. It did resemble something out of a bad satanic-themed film. Naruto. Explain. Rin made a toothy grin. Sakura's body has been violated almost nightly by Zoken's crestworms since your father gave her up to the Matu. Zoken had Shinji rape her on a regular basis because of the side effects of crestworms in females. To top it all off, Zoken used pieces of the previous war's Grail to transform himself into a lesser Grail like Emiya. Naruto finished by motioning to the white-haired girl. Rin didn't say anything, but tears welled up in her eyes, and Naruto didn't need to be an empath to sense his master's sheer shame and guilt. So, we're repairing her as much as we can, at least physically. Naruto reached a conclusion. Excellent. Saber gave a nod. Go ahead. Nodding, Naruto entered the circle and was immediately enveloped in a golden aura. Without further ado, he plunged his hand into Sakura's chest, though it appeared to phase into her rather than punch a hole in her, and upon grasping the large crestworm that held the majority of Zuken's soul, he activated his Rinnegan and began pulling at it. This was not just to take his memories or the soul from the crestworm, but to use the tethers it had to the other fragments of Zuken's soul, remotely ripping them out of their current physical shells. Matu Zoken died 10 seconds in. There was no struggle or fight. He died without knowing who killed him. Without him, the remaining crestworms would stop following whatever instructions he had given them and simply become immobile, withering away as the prana they possessed was depleted. Nodding, Naruto removed his hand from her body and pressed it against her chest, taking a few moments to fully discern Sakura's energy signature without the energy from Zoken, the Grail fragments, and the taint on them. However, before moving on, he decided it was a good time to end Sakura's time as a lesser Grail as well as her connection to what Zuken's memories revealed to be Angra Mainyu within the Grail. This was accomplished through the use of a Keiyaku Fuin, which cut her off from the greater Grail and the evil that lay within it. Then he implanted the Avalon that he had liberated from Emiya Shuru in her. Because of its proximity to Saber, it immediately set about healing its host's body. It would, however, be unable to purge the crestworms that had integrated into Sakura to the point where they were considered a part of her. That was Kurama's job, Naruto decided, and while in full Kyuubi chakra mode, he used the chakra transfer jutsu to bestow on Sakura a one-tailed chakra cloak, just as he had on the entire allied forces when fighting the Jubi. And then pushed it even further, transforming it into a one-tailed blood shroud that immediately began eroding Sakura's body. Naruto. Rin screamed in agony. Rin, her body is infested with crestworms. Some have been in her for so long that they have completely integrated into her body. They must leave. Naruto stated emphatically. This form is doing a lot of damage to her, both externally and internally, but it also grants an incredible healing factor, and when combined with Avalon's healing, she'll be fine. I'm also keeping her unconscious throughout so she doesn't feel any pain. He gave her assurance. Will this procedure have any long-term consequences? Saber inquired, her gaze drawn to the humanoid black and red fox Sakura had been transformed into by the combination of Biju chakra and blood. Her life is being cut short by the repeated damage and healing, but Avalon is mostly ignoring the issue. Otherwise, there is nothing. Naruto stated emphatically. I see. So there you have it. Saber nodded in agreement. What about the rapist? Her angry eyes narrowed. I had a clone kill him in a shambles as soon as I dealt with Zoken, just in case the old bastard took offense to having the last of his bloodline killed, which was unlikely. Naruto stated icily. They'll have disposed of his body by now. Good. Rin clenched her teeth. Thankfully, Kurama's corrosive chakra only took 10 minutes to erode all of Sakura's additions, including most of the fragments of the broken Grail, and then regenerate the lost parts with the help of Avalon. When the blood shroud was pushed back into a chakra cloak, Rin, Saber, and Emiya gasped at the sight of Sakura's body. Her entire skin eroded away, but it only lasted a few seconds before Avalon and the chakra cloak healed it as well before being absorbed by Naruto. This left a naked Sakura on the floor, but she was clearly changed by the experience. Color had been restored to her skin as a result of all the time she had spent underground and being experimented on by the crestworms. The purple her hair had become as a result of Zoken's alterations was purged, leaving it ebony black rather than the near black-brown Rin's hair was. Her eyes, which had been the same aqua blue as Rin's before being altered to purple by Zoken, had now taken the red from both Kurama's chakra and the previous lesser Grail, Irisveil von Einsburn, resulting in a striking violet. Finally, her body appeared to have experienced a growth spurt. Nothing out of the ordinary, just a centimeter in height and an emphasis on her already generous curves. We've finished with Sakura. Emiya comes next. As he extracted Avalon from the still unconscious girl, Naruto stated. Eh? Blinked the albino. We won't be able to undo all of the damage done to your lifespan, but we should be able to ensure you don't die before the Grail appears. Naruto explained as he implanted the sheath in the young-looking girl who was actually a couple of years his senior. He then infused her with Kurama's chakra while maintaining the connection, temporarily granting her the Kyuubi chakra mode. This isn't harming me like it did Sakura. Emiya made an inquisitive remark. How come you didn't use this on her? I needed to erode her system's alterations and additions. Naruto reminded everyone. Since it will now take longer than it did for Sakura, why don't you all sit down so I can explain the situation to you? He suggested. Alright, spill. Rin nodded as she watched a clone dress Sakura once more. Basically, the Holy Grail is currently tainted. Naruto started. Because the Einsburn tampered with the system prior to the Third Grail War. They did this by removing many of the safety constraints on the types of spirits that can be summoned into the servant containers and introducing a new class, Avenger. What kind of constraints? Rin scowled. At first, only good, heroic spirits can be summoned. But, in the absence of that constraint, we have Bluebeard as caster in the Fourth War. It's not surprising that they had to remove that restriction because they wanted to summon Angra Mainyu, the Zoroastrian god of darkness. Naruto did a deadpan. I suppose another restriction removed was the summoned servant's divinity level. Saber made a remark. Correct. In reality, the Throne of Gods is a subset of the Throne of Heroes, reserved for those with a rank or higher divinity. Naruto started. Are you like that? Emiya made a remark. And your Heracles and Gilgamesh, as well as a slew of demigods who maintained connections to their divine source while alive, and obviously full divine spirits, gods in their own right. Naruto gave a nod. I see. But why is Avenger corrupting the Grail? Rin scowled. Because Avenger is still in the Grail. Naruto did a deadpan. Those idiots, the Ainsburn, went to great lengths to summon Angra Mainyu, but forgot to ensure that it would return to the throne after the Grail War ended, as the spirits of the servants summoned in the 7 standard classes did. So, Angra Mainyu has been waiting for the completion of the Grail in order to be born into the world. And, well, erase humanity from existence. Because he is conceptually a wish-granting being, he was able to incorporate himself into the Grail. What exactly do you mean? Saber smirked. Angra Mainyu was originally a human who was ritualistically tortured and sacrificed by the priests of his village, forcing him to conceptually take on all the world's evil over the course of his miserable life just so that they themselves would not have any evil burdening their own souls. Naruto expressed his displeasure. That was the form summoned by the Ainsburn, which was why it was so weak. It was just some poor sap who was abused by a bunch of assholes. When he died as a human, however, he ascended to godhood. In the Third Grail War, he died as a servant and ascended to godhood, but he was trapped within the Grail and its limitations. So, this and the previous wars were pointless because if we try to get a wish granted, we're going to end the world? Rin finished. For the time being, yes. Naruto grinned. Fortunately, I'm a stubborn jerk who won't back down just because some god of evil is attempting to deceive me. Allow me to demonstrate how I intend to deal with it. Is that all right with you, Sakura? The eyes of the adopted Matu opened, giving him a sheepish look as everyone stared at her. How much time has she been awake? Emiya, who was still covered in glowing golden chakra, inquired. She awoke while my clone was getting her dressed. Naruto responded with amusement. How do you feel? I'm having. Sakura began by sitting up straight. Incredible. She expressed surprise. What exactly did you do? I repaired almost everything Zoken did to your body. Naruto responded. What? Sakura asked, surprised. Smiling, Naruto motioned to a full-length mirror nearby, and Sakura froze when she looked into it. She reached up and touched her face slowly, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing, while watching her reflection do the same. Then she took a strand of her hair and pulled it in front of her eyes, confirming that it was no longer purple. This is. Sakura shook. Zoken and Shinji are also no longer alive, so you don't have to worry about them ever touching you again. Naruto spoke softly. Thank you. Thank you incredibly much. She burst out crying. Sighing, Naruto summoned a Kage Bunshin, who immediately went to comfort the crying girl because moving would have required him to drag Emiya with him. The room was silent as they waited for Sakura to calm down and regain some measure of composure, but no one tried to rush her. She deserved to take all the time she needed after what she had been through. She did, however, calm down after about a half hour. You asked me a question earlier, Naruto-sama. Sakura mentioned this. Please remove the suffix. Naruto will suffice. He informed her. As for what I asked, I need your help to demonstrate how I would remove Angra Mainyu from the Grail system. He elaborated. I'll do my best, but I lack combat magecraft. Sakura apologized, embarrassed. Oh, don't worry, there will be no fighting. You don't have to do anything. Simply remain motionless. It will be unpleasant, but it is necessary for your own health. He informed her. Excellent. I'm in your hands. Sakura made a bow. I just need you to open your shirt buttons so I can touch the skin on your chest, Naruto told her before turning to face Emiya. It appears that this is the best we can do. He made his decision as he drew his chakra. I'm feeling a lot more alive, Emiya agreed. Keep Avalon in you for the time being. It will lessen the strain from the servants absorbed. Naruto gave the order. Okay. Emiya gave a nod. Now all I need is for you to stand still, Sakura. As Naruto approached Sakura, he entered his six paths senjutsu state, 10 black spheres that were the truth-seeking balls manifesting behind him before one moved in front of her and shifted into a large bowl shape. It may feel strange and possibly unpleasant, but it will not harm you. Contrary, given what we're about to extract from you, he stated emphatically. I'm prepared. Sakura kept her cool as she drew her shirt back to reveal her bra-clad breasts. Good. Naruto performed 7 hand seals before pressing his right hand against her chest. Kaya Huan, he exclaimed, then made a grasping motion and began to pull away. A stream of black mud emerged from Sakura's body, attached to his hand, and when he let go, it poured into the bowl-shaped truth-seeking ball and was erased from existence. Even so, in the short time it took for Sakura's body to be completely destroyed, everyone present felt the foulness of it, the girls recoiling from it. What on earth is that thing? Saber inquired. Curses that have manifested. Just a drop of what poured from the Greater Grail after Kiritsugu ordered you to destroy it with Excalibur at the end of the previous war. Naruto replied, inspecting Sakura and nodding satisfied that she was curse-free. And yet, billions remain, one for every human on the planet. He sighed and returned to his normal state. What you did to Sakura. You intend to do the same with the Holy Grail, don't you? Emiya became aware. Yep. I'm on my way there right now. First, I need to make a quick stop outside the mansion. It's best if you all stay put. Naruto confirmed as he approached the window, which he opened and jumped out of. When the massive barrier was removed, revealing several cage bunshin in sage mode holding gigantic spheres of dark energy above their heads all over the Tohsaka Rin, the girls' eyes widened. What did they have? Sakura inquired. They actually finished Gaia's hatred. They actually separated Gaia's hatred for humanity from the entire world's mana. Rin responded with surprise. Gaping, they could only watch as Naruto extinguished the taint, Rin absently telling them he sent it to the reverse side of the world, and then leave after extinguishing his clones. Sakazuki no 10. And that's it. Naruto muttered as he looked at the kilometer-wide magic circle carved into the rock with the magic circuits of Justice Lizric von Einsburn, who was still alive and well as the core of the Greater Grail. Even though he was in another dimension, he could feel the foulness that had contaminated the Greater Grail system. Due to the nearly impenetrable barrier surrounding the entire cavern to prevent tampering, reaching this location would have been impossible for the average person, whether magus or servant. Fortunately, the Aminate Hikara in his left eye enabled him to simply teleport within the barrier, a feat that only Zelrech, the magician of the kaleidoscope, could match in this day and age. He shook his head and decided to get to work. He formed a cage bunshin and then set them to work drawing a seal on the ground around the magic circle's center. Meanwhile, he drew another seal in the magic circle's center. It was the Kaya Huan that he had used on Sakura, a written version similar to the opposite that Kakashi had once used to contain Sasuke's cursed seal of heaven. He was using a written version rather than a chakra-imprinted version for one simple reason: he didn't want to be anywhere near when that pure evil came out, let alone in physical contact with it. As a result, the purpose of the seal his clone was drawing was to limit the effects of the Kaya Huan to that space rather than the entire magic circle. It only took a few minutes for him to finish and double-check his work before proceeding to activate it. He entered his 6 paths senjutsu state and summoned 6 Kage Bunshin, who quickly positioned themselves around the outer seal and activated it. Naruto then had his truth-seeking balls merge into a single large one and move over the space within the outer seal's boundaries before shifting into a dome that completely covered that area. As a backup safety precaution, the clones went through 4 hand seals and set up the 6-sided Masekyujin around the outer seal. Only then did Naruto activate the Kaya Huan while focusing his will on the truth-seeking ball, which proved to be a good idea because the torrent of materialized curses erupted like a geyser, and even with his full focus on the truth-seeking ball, it shuddered slightly from the pressure from beneath. Naruto remained in that position for the entire night, his entire focus on ensuring that not a drop of Angramainyu's curse escaped. The torrent of curses died away shortly after dawn, the truth-seeking ball scraping the surface of the stone in case there was anything left there. Sighing in relief, he dismissed the clones, as well as the Masekyujin and the containment seal, before converting the single large truth-seeking ball into 10 smaller ones and returning to his normal state. Damn. Good thing I can use senjutsu on my own to replenish my reserves. Otherwise, Rin would have been drained dry by now, what with all the expensive jutsu I've been throwing around. As he stretched, he sighed. Another plus is that servants don't have to sleep. Otherwise, I'd be screwed. Shaking his head, he exited the cavern via the same tunnel he had entered, soon reaching the barrier, beyond which a grinning Lancer awaited. Yo. See you. Chillane smiled and greeted. Hey, it's been a while. Naruto smiled. Tell me what brought you here. Whatever the hell you did in there had a really bad reaction from my now former master. Lancer smiled broadly. It appears to have been detrimental to his heart. Kotomine is no longer alive? Naruto blinked, having learned from Zoken's memories that the priest was Lancer's master, which the worm familiars had only recently discovered. Yep. He did, however, give me one last order to come here and kill whoever was in that cave behind you using command spells. Lancer responded with a twirl of his spear. That explains why you haven't faded yet. Naruto nodded in agreement. Well, I've had a long night, so if you don't mind, I'll fight you straight away, unlike last time. He said this as he activated the 6 paths senjutsu, as well as the Rinnegan and Kyuubi chakra modes, and entered his strongest humanoid state. Great. Lancer yelled. Now let's. Gah. He exclaimed, coughing up blood. Looking down, he noticed a golden energy-encased arm piercing his chest. He was then touched on the head and looked up into Naruto's Rinnegan eyes. Damn, I was hoping for a real fight, he moaned. How about with an assassin? Naruto made this observation as he continued to use the human path to read his memories, particularly his knowledge of magecraft such as runes. Excellent point. Lancer sighed before dissolving into motes of prana and disappearing. I'm curious how Gilgamesh will react. Naruto mused as he returned to the Tohsaka mansion. Are you coming back? Naruto blinked, his gaze falling to Sakura, who was bowing deeply, her brow touching the ground. Please take me along. Sakura pleaded once more. Why? He frowned, his gaze moving to Emiya, who shrugged with an innocent smile on her lips. I'd like to start over. Hopefully, a better life awaits. Sakura elaborated. You do realize that there was conflict around every corner during my time period, with at least one world war in which I earned the majority of my legend. And perished in right? Naruto pressed the button. Yes. Sakura agreed. But I'm hoping for a happier life, even if I have to fight for it at some point. She agreed. It can't be as bad as my life as Amatu. She stated angrily. Things could be a lot worse. Naruto did a deadpan. With Zoken, evil as he was, he still needed you alive and in relatively good health if the Matu bloodline was to be continued. On the other hand, an infamous and powerful criminal from my time was known to have kidnapped and experimented on hundreds, if not thousands, of people of all ages. It's gruesome stuff, the kind you'd be lucky not to see. He became obsessed with learning all of the jutsu that existed, and then with immortality so that he could learn them all. He eventually developed a jutsu that allowed him to take over the bodies of others for a few years. And he's going to come after me? For his research? Sakura remained motionless. Well, no, I don't believe so. I know who he'll be interested in, and given that my wish would put us in a world where we'd have a happier life than I did before, it shouldn't be a problem. Naruto agreed. Then, if you want me, I'll take that risk. Sakura stated resolutely. It's amazing how strong her will has become in just a day without Zuken's worms or Angra Mainyu's taint. Naruto pondered. Excellent. But be warned. While I will do my best to look after you, I have no idea where you will be reincarnated or what state either of us will be in for at least a while. Many thanks. Sakura bowed once more. Please excuse my intrusion. What prompted you to take this risk? I mean, I had the impression you had feelings for one of your senpais. Naruto pushed. He does not reciprocate my feelings. Sakura lowered her head, her eyes cast in shadow. Today I confessed. She agreed. I see. Well, you're probably better off not trying to date Emiya Shuru. Naruto exhaled a sigh. Why? He's a nice young man. Sakura objected. Oni-chan possesses a reality marble. His thinking is distorted. Ilya raised his voice. If you stayed by his side, you'd have to put up with all his eccentricities and obsessions. She sadly shook her head. He may not be the evil bastard grandfather my grandfather made me believe he was, but his obsession with saving people. She paused. I see. Sakura frowned. Alright, it's time to go. Naruto made the decision after noticing Rin approaching with saber. Is it safe for us to accompany you? Ilya inquired, somewhat skeptically. I mean, to confront Castor and her archer. She expanded. No, but with Gilgamesh still around, it's our only option. He would kidnap or kill you to ensure that the Holy Grail did not fall into his hands. Naruto elaborated. Not to mention, with the deaths of Castor and Archer, we'll be close to completing the Grail. And will you kill me to accomplish this, assassin? Saber inquired as she walked in with a frown. No need. Gilgamesh is bound to appear, and his death will suffice. Naruto brought this up. What I have in mind for you. So, tell me, would you rather continue your quest to spit on all your knights and people's sacrifices? He raised a brow. No, you made your point. Saber averted her gaze, a look of shame and pain on her face. Naruto had made no bones about how stupid and outright insulting her wish to never become king was after hearing it that morning. He could understand wanting a change at a normal or better life. That was what he was personally aiming for. But erasing both your achievements and those of countless others had irritated him greatly, and he had not been shy in telling her so. Would you then like to stay with Rin? Naruto made an offer. With her level of power, she can support you even if the Grail system is not present. That's something I'd like. Saber smiled at the pigtailed girl, who grinned broadly as if she'd won the lottery. In that case. Naruto placed his left hand on Rin's, passing the command spells in the contract to the Tohsaka heiress. Are you okay with supporting 2 servants at the same time? Saber smirked. No need to worry. Naruto barely uses any of my power. His ability allows him to feed off of the surrounding mana. Rin elaborated. I see, then let us go. Saber gave a nod. It didn't take them long to get to the bottom of the stairs leading up to the temple, with only a quick stop by the Emiya residents to put Shuru to sleep for the night to ensure he didn't interfere or do anything stupid. Archer has seen us and is getting ready to fire. Naruto said with a frown. Caster's strategy is, to say the least, brilliant. Given that the only way into the temple is through the front gate due to the spiritual barrier surrounding the mountain, using an archer at the gate means it can cover the distance from all the way up there to not only here but a good portion of the surrounding area. His senjutsu allowed him to sense Archer's actions, he remarked. Interesting. His lips curved into a grin. Please follow me. I'll take care of it. As he started up the stairs, he declared. He'd only taken 3 steps up when an arrow shrouded in red blurred down towards him, radiating intense power and heat, and vanished? Naruto? Rin inquired with trepidation and curiosity. He's shooting noble phantasms, but they're not. I believe they are made of prana, a more advanced form of projection. Naruto grinned. It's a drag to be him. I am capable of absorbing prana. Every arrow he fires at me will only add to my arsenal's power. As he continued down the Preta path, the Rinnegan shone brightly in his eyes. The more they advanced up the stairs toward the temple gate, the more projected arrows rained down on them, with Naruto absorbing each and every one of them, just as he had predicted. The archer tried to be creative, aiming at their surroundings to cause explosions, but the debris was easily kept at bay with a Shinra Tensei, and the flames created by some of the projectiles were still magical flames, able to be absorbed by the Preta path. The group eventually arrived near the top of the stairs, led by Naruto and Saber. Archer, who wore black armor with a red cloak over it and had tan skin, gray eyes, and white hair, stood there looking at them with an annoyed yet resigned expression. Despite this, Naruto recognized his energy signature while in Sage mode and this close up. How vexing. Despite my warnings, Emiya Shuru, you continued to practice magecraft. Naruto smirked. While that was my name once upon a time, I was not the one to whom you issued such a warning. It's not surprising, really, because I've already realized this isn't my world. Archer made a remark. However, if you try to stop my foolish younger self, you have my gratitude. He gave a small smile. I wouldn't want him to walk down my street. I was foolish enough to have multiple parallel selves. What did you do that made you regret becoming a heroic spirit? Naruto smirked. I work as a counter-guardian. Do you know what Alaya forces me to do, Uzumaki Naruto? Archer smirked. I know now, because the Grail provided the information. Naruto spoke softly. Still, how did you figure out who I was? I had assumed that there were no traces of my civilization left in the world. He mentioned it. I remember all of my summonings because of my pellicular position. Archer disclosed. And, while I haven't met this iteration of you before, I have met many others. I see.
Naruto nodded in agreement.
In any case, I'm afraid I need you to die in order for the Grail to appear. You already know it is. He shook his head. You should be aware that the Holy Grail has been tainted by. Archer started. Angra Mainyu, she says. Naruto interrupted him. I've already dealt with it. Really? Archer looked up. That was quick. What have you been summoned for? Is it less than a week? I also took out 3 servants. I ate a large ramen snack immediately after being summoned. Naruto shrugged, as if that was the end of the story. I'm not having another ramen argument with Uzumaki Naruto. Archer shook his head, determined. What's the point of arguing? It's divine nourishment. Naruto yelled. Of course, whatever. Archer sighed, falchions of black and white materializing in his hands. Yeah, it's time to see Caster. Naruto agreed and moved and punched through Archer's chest in a burst of speed, the falchions that had been raised to block being broken before even being touched by the blonde's fist due to him still using the Preta path of the Rinnegan. Gaw. Archer coughed up some blood. As expected. He sighed as Naruto placed a hand on his head and chose the human path this time. Ah. Naruto drew back from the fading Archer. A reality marble is being read. This was most likely the stupidest thing I'd done since Rin summoned me. He frowned. It was. With a growl, Kurama agreed. How serious is it? Naruto inquired warily. Given enough time, it will recover. However, your mind has been significantly destabilized. Also, only a few of the blueprints remained, and they were the ones he used the most. Your mind simply lacks the capacity to host a foreign reality marble. Kurama elaborated. Well, I saw that coming. With a mental sigh, Naruto agreed. How are you, assassin? Saber inquired. Yeah, I'm fine. Naruto gave a nod. Most of the time, he added. Allow us to deal with Caster. Saber stated this. Yeah, it's time to wrap this up. Naruto agreed and took the initiative. And quickly held an arm to the side, preventing Saber from moving forward. What exactly is it? Saber demanded, scanning the area for potential threats. There are a lot of traps. Of the magical variety. Naruto explained, his Rinnegan revealing the sigils that covered the vast majority of the courtyard. I see. As one would expect from a caster. Saber pondered. Will you absorb them as well, or should I take the initiative and let my magic resistance absorb the blows? No, I'm just going to set them all off. Naruto shakes his head. Suddenly, thousands of cage bunchins swarmed the courtyard. It only lasted a second before pillars of ice, wind, fire, lightning, stone, and other magical attacks erupted from the ground all over the place, killing the clones while draining the energy stored in the sigils. Alright, now we have to find Caster. Rin made a remark. Shinra Tensei Naruto stated calmly as he pointed his and at the space next to Saber, eliciting a pained scream in response as Caster's invisibility spell was broken when she was blasted away. Bansho Tenin, he said, pulling Caster into his grip, 2 clones appearing at her sides, holding her in place. You. Assassin. Caster spit out. Despite her rage, Naruto had to admit that she was quite beautiful, with her delicate features, blue eyes, and light blue hair. If his eyes weren't deceiving him, she had pointed ears. Medea of Colchis is the betrayal witch. One of the blueprints that remained as her dagger. Concentrate on Rule Breaker to learn about her past. Kurama gave the order. Naruto closed his eyes for a moment, feeling both anger and sadness at what the woman had been put through by arrogant gods. He reached out and used the human path on her, confirming that she belonged to the same iteration that the Rule Breaker Archer had recorded, as well as copying her own memories, most notably her vast knowledge of magecraft. Please accept my apologies, Medea. Naruto gave her a melancholy smile. I would not have denied you the second chance you seek if the circumstances had been different. But I'm afraid I'm fighting for the same thing. I see. Medea mostly calmed down, her eyes bitter yet resigned. Isn't it nothing personal? Yes. Naruto has confirmed this. If we meet again, I will do my best to give you the second chance you seek. That is a guarantee. Thank you very much, assassin. Medea shut her eyes. Finish it, she said. After the cage Bunshin and Medea dispersed, one of the clones severed her head from her shoulders, leaving Naruto standing alone seconds later. Ah. Ilya mumbled. Ilya? Naruto looked at her with concern. Not yet. But it's close, very close. Ilya acknowledged, a hand on her chest. I see. He's almost here. And it appears that he is not the only one who is on his way. Naruto's pupils constricted. Get inside quickly, he demanded. He arrived less than 2 minutes later. The King of Heroes had made his entrance, clad in golden armor, with golden blonde hair and slit crimson eyes. It appears that fate has brought us back together, Saber. The fourth Grail war archer smirked. Gilgamesh. Saber spit out. It's good to see you haven't lost your spark. Gilgamesh laughed before his gaze returned to Naruto and his smile faded. I must admit, I never imagined meeting someone from the age of ninja that preceded the age of the gods, let alone Uzumaki Naruto, slayer of the primordial goddess of this world. Actually, I just resealed her. Naruto corrected himself. True, but there was only so long she could go without her power. She withered away as she starved within the second stone seal. Gilgamesh has been revealed. It is now known as the reverse side of the world. I know. I went there recently. Naruto agreed. However, despite your reputation, I will not let you take what is mine. Gilgamesh grinned. You must earn my Grail if you want to claim it. That was the intention. Naruto returned the smirk. However, before they could fight, Gilgamesh was forced to step aside as a massive white furred being barreled through the gate. You. It was you. Was snarled with venom. It was a massive white dog, about twice the size of a rhinoceros, glaring around with mad crimson eyes. Despite its attractive appearance, the dog did not speak. It was a disheveled-looking teenage girl in a tattered black dress on its back. She had long black hair and wild crimson eyes, a feral expression on her face, and her vampire fangs were visible to all. Did you do it? As she glared at Naruto, she snarled with venom. What did I do? Blinked the blonde assassin. I'm not sure. But you messed with Gaia. Gaia's help, you took it away from us. You robbed us of our regeneration. The dead apostles are extinct because of you. She screamed. I did? Naruto smiled after blinking. Is it just me, or am I amazing? I accidentally exterminated vampires. You. Snarled the girl. However, hold on. Naruto smirked. How did you get here if all the dead apostles are gone? Because I am half-true ancestor, I was able to survive and regenerate from the ashes of my dead apostle side. And I'm going to fucking kill you, you filthy human. She stated. Really? Naruto shook his head, unimpressed. Naruto, be cautious. From somewhere behind him, Rin hissed. Altruge Brunstute is the only half-dead apostle, half-true ancestor I know of, and the large dog associated with her is primate murder, the beast of Gaia. The beast of Gaia, you say? Naruto's pupils constricted as he stared at the ferocious-looking dog. It reminds me of. Hey. exclaimed the Biju within him. If that's the case, I'm going to have to go all in. Naruto smirked as he clapped his hands together, sending ripples through the fabric of reality. Allied Shinobi forces jutsu. He roared, and the world around them changed in a flash of golden light. The temple with its shattered gates and the starry night sky had vanished. Instead, they found themselves on a seemingly endless arid plain riddled with craters and trenches. A red moon glowed ominously in the sky above. What is a reality marble? How charming. Gilgamesh took a sniff. Who are you? What the hell are you? Altruge's voice was no longer echoing demonically. Instead, it was reduced to a whisper as she stared at the red moon above with wide eyes. Why? Why is the crimson moon in your inner world? She demanded, raising her voice. Why not? Naruto responded with a confident grin. After all, I am not only the descendant of the man who created the moon, but also the chosen heir. Hell, I'm the descendant and slayer of the alien goddess who was imprisoned by the moon in the first place. The half-true ancestor's already pale face became even paler with each word. If what he said was true, he was much closer to being the ultimate one of the moon than either she or the last full true ancestor, Arcued Brunstud. After all, unlike them, who were potential vessels created by Gaia's power for Crimson Moon Brunstud to reincarnate into, this person had a direct blood connection to what was most likely the original type moon millennia before Crimson Moon Brunstud existed. Still. No, you're telling the truth. Altruge's pupils constricted. This is a forgery. The power boost I'd get if this was the real Crimson Moon. Ah, but that's where you're completely wrong. Naruto smiled broadly, though the steel in his eyes grew sharper. You are not receiving a boost from the moon because it is a fake. Rather, it is one of the effects of my reality marble. What exactly do you mean? Altruge demanded, quickly looking over at Primate Murder to reassure herself. Even when they were cut off from Gaia's power, which would have boosted their abilities, they were still monsters among monsters, and this person was expending energy by maintaining the reality marble. The more she talked to him, the better. It was on this battlefield that a horde of power-hungry fools attempted to enslave humanity using the moon's power. Naruto started. And it was here that the moon's power was broken. Since then, the moon has had no power to influence mortals' fates. But this? This right here? This world is stuck on the final battlefield I fought on, where I broke the moon's power in every way. Gaia may have foolishly granted the moon influence on Earth since then, but the moon's power has been broken here, on this battlefield. Altruge frowned. It wasn't the first reality marble he'd seen that gave the user an advantage over dead apostles. It was usually done by taking advantage of one of their natural weaknesses, such as certain levels of sunlight and all things holy. But what about a reality marble, which completely negated the moon's influence even as it hung in the sky at its highest point? Inconceivable. Regardless, even if you deny the moon's benefits to me, I have enough essence of my dead apostle side left in me to deny the power of humanity, that heroic spirits like you represent. Do you think I'm going to fight you alone? Naruto grinned. So what if you have the swordswoman on your side? She is also a heroic spirit, which is the same thing. Altruge laughed. I didn't mean Saber at all. I was referring to them. Naruto smiled broadly. Who? Altruge began to choke as he took a quick look around at her surroundings. They were all over. Hundreds of thousands, perhaps tens of thousands. They all wore the same metal plaque on their person, usually tied to their foreheads, and wore similar outfits with flak jackets of various designs and colors. And there was only one symbol on that plaque, Shinobi. Worse, several of them radiated at least as much power as some of the lower-ranked dead apostle ancestors did before their extinction. And as much as she was doing now. But it was them, above all else. 9 beings, each towering over everything, with the general shape of animals or hybrids and multiple tails swinging behind them. And the most powerful of them, the 9-tailed fox, which even she had heard of, if only because it was said to be a fragment of the Shinto goddess of the sun, stood right behind her enemy, glaring down at her with slit crimson eyes that radiated more malice than any dead apostle she had ever met. The allied shinobi forces jutsu is when all of our world's military power is gathered in one place, fighting under a single banner, with a single goal in mind: to defeat those who would use the power of the moon to subjugate us. They are all my trusted comrades who have given me their power. And I lent them mine. Smirked Naruto. With that declaration, reddish-orange power erupted from every single one of the humans summoned by the reality marble, and when it settled down, it cloaked them all in that energy, which resembled a fox in shape. The same power radiated from both the now grinning 9-tailed fox and her adversary, who was now dressed in a trench coat of golden-orange energy with black circles and lines strewn about. And as her comprehension dwindled, genuine fear caused her to freeze. That orange energy that empowered them all. It wasn't human power. Rather, she felt the same power, albeit much more diluted and tainted, from primate murder. They all now possessed Gaia's power, and the 9-tailed beasts among them were exactly like primate murder, beasts of Gaia. Only obviously much, much stronger. A bell-like screech sounded, and as she looked in that direction, she saw a ball of swirling white energy the size of a human body, with 4 white blades spinning around it, formed in each of her enemy's outstretched hands. Everything then exploded into motion. And then she was gone, her attempt to flee foiled by her own shadow rising to hold her down and strangle her, keeping her in place long enough for one of the Rasenshuriken to strike and vaporize her. Primate murder, on the other hand, was more difficult to eradicate. Against Altruge, taking away her curse of restoration as a dead apostle, cutting her off from Gaia's support as a true ancestor, and finally completely negating the power of the moonfolk on that battlefield had all but crippled her. The coup de grace was boosting the power of the manifested humans with non-human power and allowing them to bypass her resistance to the power of humanity. However, primate murder was a Gaia beast. Even being cut off from the planet meant it couldn't get any more help. Even so, it possessed so much power that it would require 7 of Elia's counter-guardians to keep it in check. As a result, even though its opponents had received a significant boost in both offense and defense as a result of the Kyuubi chakra cloaks, it was still ripping them apart at a steady rate, killing hundreds in mere seconds and thousands by the time Altruge was killed, which enraged the white beast even more. It wasn't the only beast of Gaia there, fortunately for Naruto and unfortunately for primate murder. Furthermore, it was not even the strongest of them. Sure, it was fast and nearly unrivaled at killing humans, but Naruto was still faster, and power-wise, each of the Biju was above the white beast, their already enormous power boosted even further by their own legends to new heights. Soon, the ninja had stopped fighting and were simply watching the Biju smack primate murder around like a ball, much like they had done with Madara after Obito's defeat and release from the Gedo Mazo. However, the battle had to come to an end, and Naruto realized this quickly. He had made certain to separate the group when he manifested his reality marble. While he and Saber remained to deal with Altruge and primate murder, he dispatched Rin, Emiya, and Sakura to his reality marble's equivalent of Konoha, while Gilgamesh was in Suna. And he knew that not only would the King of Heroes be angry at being seemingly dismissed and sent away while he dealt with the 2 beings angry at him for purging the world of Gaia's hatred for humanity, and apparently killing all the dead apostles, but he also had the power to shatter his reality marble like an egg, just as he did with one of the riders from the 4th Grail War. So he had to hurry up and neutralize primate murder so that his reality marble was no longer required. As a result, He had Shukaku bind the white beast with his cursed seals and then used the Rinnegan's human path to find some weakness in the juggernaut that had ranked as the top dead apostle ancestor since Gaia's creation. It took him a while, and given how hard it was fighting, he was afraid it would escape, but beneath centuries of near-mindless bloodshed lay centuries more of coherent memories, among them the solution he sought. Removing his hand, he fashioned a few chakra-conductive black rods out of truth-seeking balls and stabbed them all over Primate Murder's body before surging as much of his and the Biju's chakra through the newly formed connection, all while staring the white beast in the eyes and imposing the strongest genjutsu he could. With 9 ancient minds fighting Primate Murder's will alongside his own, he triumphed and bound the white beast to his will, as a summoned creature that would answer the call of his animal path. It wasn't as smooth and gentle as when Merlin transformed Primate Murder's original name, Kath Palug, into his familiar, but it had clearly devolved into a near-rabid beast since then due to Gaia's growing hatred for humanity. He dismissed Primate Murder to the pocket dimension where Rinnegan's summoned creatures were stored and regenerated, and after turning around and thanking his surroundings, he ended the manifestation of his reality marble, returning the survivors to Ryudu Temple. "I apologize for the interruption, Gilgamesh." Naruto expressed regret. "Where were we before? At least you're aware of your rudeness." The King of Heroes shook his head. "Do you think the intruders were sufficiently punished? What does disintegration sound like?" Naruto shook his head. "Satisfactory." Gilgamesh approved with a regally inclined head. "However, as you mentioned, where were we? This is the final battle of the Grail War." Naruto responded, his power exploding as he used Kyuubi Chakra Mode, Power of the Gathered 9, 6 Paths Senjutsu, and Rinnegan all at the same time. "Excellent point." Gilgamesh shot back, grinning widely as hundreds of Golden Gate of Babylon portals manifested all around him, filling his side of the temple's courtyard and beginning to unleash their contents, hundreds upon hundreds of powerful treasured weapons, and not the low-grade ones the King of Heroes usually deigned to sacrifice to eliminate the average mongrel, but all were high-grade noble phantasms, B rank at the lowest. "It's Shinra Tensei." Naruto roared as he threw a large portion of his power into the jutsu, unleashing a gravity blast that dwarfed Nagato's use of gravity to turn Konoha into a massive crater. He was not in any real danger. With his speed, he could have easily avoided all of those weapons, which appeared to be moving in slow motion to him. He could easily have teleported away. He could have used a massive Bijudama to annihilate Gilgamesh and everything else the King of Uruk threw at him. And most of Fuyuki as well. The reason he didn't was simple. Rin, Ilya, and Sakura were right behind him, as was Saber, even though the servant would have survived if seriously injured without his assistance. The 3 vulnerable humans he needed to protect, one of whom was his master. And the signature jutsu of the Diva Path was ideal for this purpose. Hundreds of noble phantasms exploded into the gravity shield mere meters after exiting the Gate of Babylon, engulfing a stunned Gilgamesh in their blast waves.
Before being blasted out of the temple and into the nearly impenetrable barrier surrounding the temple, causing him to scream in agony as he was both spiritually burned by the barrier and crushed by the gravity wave that kept pushing into him.
Everything died down eventually, and he collapsed to the ground, nearly flattened by what he had been forced to endure but still barely alive. As a result, when he felt the knight at his neck poised to end his life, he was able to crack a crimson eye. "Why you make a poor assassin?" Gilgamesh made a weak remark. Being a ninja used to mean you could be an assassin, but you didn't have to. Naruto said this as he slit the Golden King's throat with a flick of his wrist. Well, cough. Finished. My cough. Ancestor. As he faded away, Gilgamesh praised. Before Naruto could respond, power surged from behind him, and as he turned around, he saw Ilya engulfed in flames and vaporized, leaving only a floating golden holy grail and Avalon, the latter of which fell to the ground. But then there was another flash of golden light, and when it faded, Emiya was back, only naked and with fading white sun and black moon on each cheek. Wait, what happened? Rin was taken aback. It is a jutsu that blurs the line between reality and illusion. Essentially, I transformed Emiya's death during the manifestation of the Holy Grail into a mere illusion. It would normally cost me an eye, but I had a workaround. Naruto smiled as he examined his hands, where the two seals had returned. I see, then I suppose this is it. Artoria made a remark. You won. Congratulations. She informed him. I appreciate it. Naruto smiled as he gazed at the Holy Grail. However, before I grant my wish and depart, I have some gifts to give. He appeared between Rin and Saber, grabbing Saber's right hand and Rin's left. They were immediately engulfed in golden and purple light, and when it faded, they stumbled slightly even as Naruto walked towards the Grail. Wait, what did you do? Even as a circular rift opened in the sky above them, swirling blue energy swirled around the edges, Rin asked in shock. I gave Saber a physical body so she wouldn't be as reliant on you for prana and so she could finally live. Naruto grinned. As for Rin, take a look at your arm. Is this a magic crest? Rin was taken aback. It contains all of Cu Chilane's rune magic, Medea's divine magic, and as much of my own knowledge of the kaleidoscope as I could safely impart from Akasha via the Grail system. It's not everything, but it should get you started on your path to becoming a magician. Many thanks. Rin muttered in surprise. Are you ready to go, ladies? Naruto's attention was now drawn to Emiya and Sakura, the latter of whom had given the former her jacket to cover herself. He got firm nods from both. Go? Where are you going? Rin insisted. Reincarnation, a new life in a better world. Naruto responded. I see. Rin gave Sakura a melancholy smile. So, best wishes to you three. Best wishes. With a nod, Naruto reached out and grabbed the Grail, which instantly read the wish in his mind. They instantly transformed into energy and shot into the sky, becoming streaks of black, white, and gold as they passed through the rift in the sky that closed behind them, disappearing from this world.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.